Lately, I've been on a mission to stop overspending on knitting patterns. So I went on a quest to see if I could find petite knit dupes for free. After weeks of digging, I found some that genuinely surprised me. And today, I want to share them with you. Let's dive in. My name is Gabriella and welcome to Pure Light Fiber. And thank you so much for joining me on this video today where we'll talk all about petite knit dupes. So as I mentioned, I'm really on a mission here to reduce my overall knitting costs. So this is going to range from yarn to accessories and, as this video today, knitting patterns. So one of my favorite designers is Petite Knit. I mean, her patterns are just really classic. So for those of you who don't know who Petite Knit is, she is a massive knitwear designer. She actually started back in 2016. She used to be in medical school, but then dropped out when she decided to quit medical school when she was pregnant with her first child, I believe, and then started writing knitting patterns. And if you've ever read or made one of her patterns before, the medical student, in my opinion, really shines through because they're so detailed and they're so meticulous, and you can, even as a beginner, like I had absolutely zero experience reading patterns or making garments at all, I was able to follow the Novice Sweater pattern so easily, step by step, with no help from anybody. So, I mean, her patterns are really great. And, you know, I really love Petite Knit, but right now I just don't want to be spending so much on knitting patterns. That's why I was searching high and low to find some alternatives so I don't have to pay the $5 to $10 for her patterns. And also I think, I mean, especially me, I forget sometimes how many free resources there are out there on the internet that I can just look up myself and get pretty much such similar things, if not exactly the same thing, for free. So, I mean, this video is also kind of a reminder to myself to, before I see a pattern that is nice and shiny and all over Instagram and I want to make, just to go on Ravelry and check the resources that I found out to see if I can find something that is similar, if not exactly the same, for free. So that's what this video today is going to be all about. It's not about shaming anybody or saying that somebody is not good or anything. It's purely for, using what you have. And I really like this mindset of seeing what's out there and don't get stuck in the same hole of knitting the same designers' patterns over and over again, because Ravelry is so vast, the knitting community is so vast, and I especially sometimes get holed into one designer. And again, this is also just a reminder to expand horizons and see what else is out there, because there's so many great designers that offer their patterns for free, and I really think that we should be taking advantage of these. So without further ado, let's get started with these patterns. So the way I have my notes down here, so you'll see me looking down every now and then. So the way I structured this video is I have those 15 patterns I want to go through. First, we'll go through accessories and then the sweater patterns. So all in all, I have one beanie pattern, one glove pattern, 3 scarf patterns, a vest, 2 cardigans, and six sweater patterns, as well as a sock pattern, so 15 overall. Timestamps down below with all the links as well to Petite Knit's patterns, as well as the dupes that I'm going to mention, or the alternatives. And so let's get started. So the first pattern that I want to go over is the Oslo Hat. Now, if you've seen any of my previous videos, I mean, I don't have that many. This is going to be my 4th video. You know that I love the Oslo Hat. I've already made 5 right now already. So when I found this alternative or this dupe, it was like, really? Because it's actually exactly the same. The way it's constructed is really exactly the same. So the Oslo Hat is obviously a hat pattern by Petite Knit. It has a 23 stitch gauge. on 3mm needles, and you're supposed to use fingering weight yarn together with a mohair. And an alternative to the Oslo hat that I found is actually, it's called Harbor Beanie by Chelsea Carson. So there are a couple of differences just in terms of gauge. The Oslo hat is 23 stitch gauge, whereas the Harbor Beanie has a 22 stitch gauge. And instead of being worked on 3mm needles, the alternative is knit on 3.75mm needles. And the yarn recommendation for this hat is Juniper Moon Farm Moonshine, which is a worsted weight yarn. Yeah, there's not really much to say of it. It's a really perfect dupe. So if you are like me and you don't want to spend any money on knitting patterns, then go over and check out Chelsea's pattern, the Harbor Beanie, because it's basically the same. What can I say about it? I mean, given the fact that I've knit 4 of these hats, one recommendation I would have, doesn't really matter if you're knitting either of these 2 patterns, but in both of these patterns, the patterns just say to, cast on X amount of stitches and then pick up stitches to create the double fold. And what a lot of people on Ravelry in the project pages have been suggesting is doing a Judy's Magic cast on or any kind of provisional cast on. So when you come to, combining those 2 layers of fabric, you're not picking up stitches, but you can just simply knit them together with your provisional cast on. So for actually all of my Oslo hats that I've made, I've been using Judy's Magic cast on. I just really prefer knitting the stitches together versus picking up, because my picking up is not the best. So sometimes I miss some stitches and it gets kind of crooked and not so nice. So I prefer the provisional cast on. So there's a little tip for you if you're like me and also struggling sometimes. And now we'll go over the penny gloves. So the penny gloves have been pretty popular these past couple weeks. So right now when I'm filming this, it is the end of December 2025. And for the last couple weeks or months, I've been seeing a lot of people wanting to knit the penny gloves. And they're really just a simple stockinette fingerless mitten with kind of a rolled edge. First I thought it was an I-cord, but it's not. It's just a rolled edge. So really simple, beautiful, timeless, classic pieces that PetiteKnit actually always makes. I mean, most of her patterns, I would say, are classic, timeless pieces. An alternative could be the Timeless Hand Warmers by Pearl Soho. Pearl Soho have a 26 stitch gauge and are worked on 3mm needles. And the penny gloves have a 25 stitch gauge and are also worked on 3mm needles. So just a 1 stitch off. On the Timeless Hand Warmers, there is an extra row of garter or pearl bumps that you knit, which the penny gloves don't have, but you could easily, just avoid that and then just knit that round instead, and you'll end up with the same looking mitten as the penny glove. And yeah, those Timeless Hand Warmers, they just look really beautiful as well. The next one that I had is the Sophie Scarf. So how can I miss the Sophie Scarf? It's going to be number 3 on my list here. So the Sophie Scarf, I don't really think needs any introduction. Made out of cashmere is the recommended yarn for that. The recommended needle size is 3.5mm needles and the gauge is 22. So I actually found one pattern that was pretty much exactly the same as well, and that's the Simple Thing by Melinda Brow. So her scarf is worked up on 24 stitch gauge and has 4.5mm needles. So it's a little bit thicker than the Sophie scarf, but it has exactly the same construction. Because on the Sophie scarf, you have to increase on one side every X amount of rows. I've never knit a Sophie scarf. I don't own the pattern, so I don't know exactly how often you have to increase, but you can probably go check the project pages on the Simple Thing scarf and see what other people are saying. And obviously the Simple Thing also has their recommended increases and decrease rate, so just follow that and you'll pretty much end up with a super similar, if not the same scarf as the Sophie scarf. The next one here is going to be the Uma scarf. So the Uma scarf is a pretty new pattern by PetiteKnit. As far as I know, it was only released a couple days ago, and the construction look of it looks pretty simple. So as far as I know, you just cast on maybe 2-3 stitches, and then you increase on each side every right side row or something like that. So that was actually in the pattern description on PetiteKnit on Ravelry. So and then she says to just increase until you run out of yarn, or until you have the desired length or size of the scarf that you want. And the special thing about the Uma scarf is I believe it's worked in stockinette, and it has a contrasting edge. A pretty good alternative as far as the contrasting edge goes is the Spring Thing by Espace Tricot. So the Spring Thing is worked it's not worked the same as the Uma scarf, so you don't increase kind of like in a triangle shape, but it's worked also from one side, the long side, to the other long side. So first you do increases and then you do decreases, same as the Sophie scarf. And with the Uma scarf, you just do increases on both sides. So you kind of have a triangle shape at the end. You could just use the instructions of the Simple Thing by Espace Tricot and see how you can add that contrasting edge. She does it very beautifully as well. I believe she has like little tassels or little bells hanging off of her side, so it's not only the contrasting edge, but it would be easy enough to just omit the tassels and then just do the contrasting color around the edge. The pattern details on Ravelry for the Uma scarf are pretty, I mean, you could pretty much make out how you need to knit the whole thing, and then just with the Spring Thing, just take the Spring Thing to see how you want to add the contrasting edge, and you're basically going to end up with the Uma scarf. So the Sophie Shawl is another one of those patterns that you could also make using the Spring Thing instructions from Espace Tricot. Now the Espace Tricot, it's worked the same way as the Sophie scarf or the Sophie Shawl. However, it has the dimension of the Sophie Shawl. The Sophie Shawl is worked on 4.5mm needles and has a 17 stitch gauge. And as I said, same construction as the Spring Thing. The only thing is that the increase and decrease rate may be different. The Sophie Shawl is worked on, its recommended yarn is a DK weight. The Spring Thing by Espace Tricot could be a great alternative for if you're wanting to knit the Uma scarf but you don't know how to add the contrasting edge, or if you just want to knit the Sophie Shawl. I mean, the Sophie Shawl has, I think, 3 different sizes. The Spring Thing comes in one size, and the Spring Thing one size corresponds to the Sophie Shawl small size, I believe. But you know, if you want to just keep on going, making it a little bit bigger, this Sophie Shawl, you're going to be ending up with a medium or large size so super easily. So you would just continue increasing a little bit more and then just decrease the same amount of stitches. So those were the accessories. We have one more accessory left to go, and that is the Sunday socks by PetiteKnit. So I have knit this pattern. I don't own the adult pattern. I have the Sunday Sock Junior, and it's a great pattern. It's just a simple 2x2 rib pattern. Doesn't feature anything special with the heel. It's just a simple stockinette heel, no double knitting or anything like that. But they're super comfortable. They're supposed to be worked up on so a worsted weight yarn, so Sudnes Garn Perfect or Filcolana Peruvia. And their needle size recommendation is 4mm needles with a 26 stitch gauge. So for these patterns, for these Sunday socks, I actually have 2 different patterns for you. So first I found the Cozy Rib Socks by Laura Dean. Her gauge is 22 stitches and the needle size is 3.75 recommendation. And the recommended yarn is Drops Cotton Light. So again, this is just a standard 2x2 rib sock pattern. I mean, if you know the amount of stitches that you need to cast on for your perfect sock, just do that and have a 2x2 rib, and I mean, you're all set to go. Another one that was really similar to the Sunday socks that I wanted to mention is the Dagrun Lugar sock pattern by Roxanne Richardson. So as far as gauge go and needle size, this is a little bit more similar to the Sunday socks. in the fact that it has a 20 stitch gauge as well, 4.5 millimeter needles, and exactly the same as the Sunday socks. They also recommend a worsted weight yarn. So the only thing I wanted to mention of Roxanne Richardson's pattern is that she has this really interesting heel construction that I've actually never seen before. So her heel construction is worked in a double bind off. I've never heard of that before. I've never seen that on a sock before, so I may be knitting these myself really soon to see what that's all about. I just wanted to mention that just so you know, when you're getting into this pattern, that there will be some differences in the heel construction. So I have two cardigan patterns here for you. I'm gonna go over the Eva cardigan and the Champagne cardigan. So the Eva cardigan first, really classic, timeless petite knit pattern. Again, it's a drop down, drop shoulder construction. It has a 20 stitch gauge and is worked on 4 millimeter needles, has a 2x2 ribbed button band and 2x2 ribbing on the cuffs and the bottom of the body as well. And the recommended yarn is pure Gint, which is kind of a DK weight yarn. And the alternative that I found for this is called the Woman's Drop Shoulder Cardigan, and it's made, the pattern designer is Alina Charity Limbitu. So her cardigan has a little bit of a tighter gauge, so it comes at a 23 stitch gauge and is worked on 6 millimeter needles, so a little bit of a thicker fabric. And it is pretty cropped, but I mean, length is the easiest thing that you can adjust. Just keep on going on the body until you reach the length that you want, which is, what you should be doing with petite knit patterns or any paid patterns for that matter as well. So yeah, just add some length there if you want it exactly like the Eva cardigan. And the only other change that to make it look exactly the same as the Eva cardigan is instead of having 1x1 rib as she recommends, the dupe recommends, you can just do the simple 2x2 button band and ribbing, and voila, your Eva cardigan stands. So again, I was just looking, on Ravelry to see if I could find any of these dupes, and the good thing about petite knits patterns are that I really understand the hype about petite knit, so I just want to say that. She has some really great staple pieces, and but yeah, because they're simple classic staple pieces, there are so many free options as well. The only thing that you kind of want to have in the back of your mind when you're getting free patterns instead of petite knit patterns is that, these patterns are for free, so they're probably not tech edited that great, or they're written not to the same standards as petite knit, or they're not translated in so many languages. So just keep that in mind, that some of the patterns might not be as beginner friendly as the petite knit patterns are. But for all intents and purposes, these are some great dupe. The Champagne cardigan is a simple raglan cardigan with a double knit button band, and it's super classic design. One of the dupes I found for it actually comes from a yarn company. So Novita is a Finnish yarn company, I believe. A lot of their designs, if you go onto their website, are free as well. And because they're Scandinavian designs, they're super similar to not only petite knit, but the whole minimalist classic style that we have going on right now that is pretty trendy. So you'll find a lot of great patterns over there. I actually found a super beautiful wrap, what do you want to call it? Like a wrap sweater, wrap cardigan over there that I really need to knit, and it was a free pattern. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, anyways, so the Novita Mila Cal Classic would be the dupe that I found for the Champagne cardigan. It's worked up at a 14 stitch gauge on 5 millimeter needles. And the cool thing about this Novita pattern is not only is it free, but it has 4 different versions. So it has a cropped version, a normal length, a super long length, as well as options to have with or without pockets. The only other thing that I wanted to mention about this one is that on the Champagne cardigan, the ribbing seems to be quite long. Again, I don't own the petite knit pattern, so I wasn't able to compare, but it did seem that the Novita ribbing was a little bit shorter than on the champagne cardigan. So if you're going for the exact champagne cardigan look, just make the ribbing a little bit longer on the sleeves and on the body. But as I said, the double folded button band is there. The only other difference is that it's worked 14 stitches versus 18 stitches. Another one that I found, so this is going to be a man's sweater. So the Hanstholm Sweater by PetiteKnit is a super classic raglan sweater for a man. For this one, it was pretty easy to find a sweater pattern that matched the Hanstholm Sweater because this PetiteKnit pattern is just a simple raglan sweater. So a lot of the free patterns that I found, they don't have, or they didn't have recommended positive ease like PetiteKnit does in pretty much all her patterns, I believe. So, you know, you can see what the circumference is of the sweater by the end of it if you knit it to gauge on these free patterns, but there's not typically a recommended amount of positive ease. So depending on what size you would knit on the free versions, that's how much positive ease you would have compared to your body. The dupe for the Hanstholm Sweater is the For You pattern that I found by Alaza Knit. Her sweater pattern is worked at a 22 stitch gauge on 4mm needles. The only other difference is that it has no double folded neckband. So if you look at these pictures, I mean, in my opinion, they look pretty identical. Again, the positive ease may be different, but you know, you can just easily fix that. Now we're going to go into the sweater patterns for women. If you know anything about Dupes, Dupes is a yarn company based in Norway that have super affordable yarn, which is pretty good quality in my opinion. I mean, considering the price tag, it's definitely better, or one of the best options out there for that price tag, for sure. And the cool thing about Dupes is that all their patterns are for free. And on Dupes, I was actually able to find so many PetiteKnit dupes. So I really, where I could, I didn't really want to have Dupes, just because I didn't want to make this video like PetiteKnit versus Dupes, which it could have easily turned into. I would say most of PetiteKnit's sweater patterns, you can find a pretty similar, if not exact dupe from Dupes design. So same as I was saying before with the free patterns with Dupes, I mean, the patterns are okay. They're not great. I mean, they're definitely not on par with PetiteKnit's pattern writing style, but as far as construction goes and stuff, I mean, they're basically the same as PetiteKnit. So anyways, the ones from PetiteKnit I found dupes for is actually for the Ingrid and the Storm sweater. The Ingrid and the Storm are pretty similar in the fact that they look like textured sweaters. So they look like super detailed cabled sweaters, but actually the construction is pretty easy, and you achieve all that textured pattern simply with knits and purls. And you can achieve this beautiful textured sweater pattern look. So let's go over the Ingrid sweater first. The Ingrid sweater is worked at a worsted weight gauge. So there's a DK weight held with a mohair together at a 20 stitch gauge, and you work it on 4mm needles. And the Storm sweater you knit at a DK weight gauge on 20 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and also on 4mm needles. The White Echo sweater by Dupes design is going to be more similar to the Storm and the Ingrid sweater in gauge and needle size. So the Dupes version has a 21 stitch gauge and is knit on 4mm needles. And obviously, I mean, the Dupes design patterns, both of these patterns, they're also knit exactly like the Ingrid and the Storm sweater by PetiteKnit in that you don't need a cable needle. There's no cables involved. It's just simple purls and knit stitches that create the textured look, and the same thing for these Dupes patterns. So, I mean, but you know, the patterning is not going to be exactly the same. So if you look closely at the Dupes free version and the PetiteKnit versions, there are differences. Yeah, there's going to be differences in the patterning. So there's, you know, on the arms, you'll see some differences on the bodies, on the neckband. But as far as dupes go, these are pretty good alternatives, I would say. And the second alternative to the Ingrid and the Storm sweater I found is the Blue Diamond, also by Dupes. So here the gauge is a little bit looser. So we have a 16 stitch gauge, and it's worked on 5 millimeter needles. Also, same as the White Echo sweater by Dupes and the Ingrid in the Storm, just created by Simple Knits and Pearls. Considering, you know, $10 for a pattern versus a free pattern, I think the Dupes looks pretty beautiful as well, to be honest with you. So next up, we're gonna go for the Novice Sweater. So this Novice Sweater by PetiteKnit is the first pattern and first garment pattern, first sweater pattern, first everything pattern that I ever made. And it was, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was so easy to follow. I mean, her pattern writing style I really like, and I really see why she's so popular. It's so easy to follow, it's super detailed, it's really meticulous. I mean, again, the medical student, her medical student past really shines through here. And yes, just really easy to follow. The Novice Sweater is just a circular yoke sweater with, I don't think there's any shaping inside, so no German short rows. You just, you know, cast on, you knit the neckband, and then you start increasing until you split for sleeves, straight down the body, and then some ribbing. You cast off normally. I mean, no Italian bind off or tubular bind off or anything, just simple cast off, and then you pick up for the sleeves, knit the sleeves, and you're done, basically. The Novice Sweater comes at a 16 stitch gauge and is worked on 6mm needles. It has a cinched in neck, so it goes a little bit up. But on mine, the one I made, I didn't double fold it, but she has the option to double fold it, so instructions how to fold it down if you want to do that. So the dupe that I found here for the Novice Sweater is the Caramel Haze Sweater by Dupes. This sweater came out, I believe, in October 2025, and it's worked up at a little bit of a tighter gauge. So it has, instead of the 16 stitches for the Novice Sweater by PetiteKnit, it has a 21 stitch gauge and is worked on 4mm needles. It does feature just a simple standard crew neck. So if you wanted to make it exactly like PetiteKnit, you would just make that crew neck a little bit tighter, cinch it in a little bit, or make it longer and then double fold it down. Another one of the, another modification I would make if you're wanting to do the Novice Sweater exactly is just knit the ribbing longer. So again, in a lot of PetiteKnit's patterns, her ribbing is quite long compared to other patterns, and as well, double folded neckband is pretty standard, as well as double knit button band at this point. And the recommended yarn for the Dupes dupe is the Daisy. Dupes Daisy is a DK weight yarn. So next up we have the Monday Sweater by PetiteKnit. So the Monday Sweater is just a simple raglan sweater for women. I think she has the Monday Sweater also for kid sizes. And this is actually one thing that kind of made me want to make this video as well. So I saw the Monday Sweater and I was like, wow, the Monday Sweater for kids. I was looking for a pattern for my daughter, who's 1-year-old, to knit. And I saw the Monday Sweater. I was like, oh, wow, this is such a beautiful pattern. Maybe I should make that. Then I remembered that I have a good old raglan sweater pattern by Twisted Knitwear, which is a free pattern. It looks exactly the same as the Monday Sweater. So why on earth would I want to buy the PetiteKnit pattern, which is so similar, if not the same, as this Twisted Knitwear pattern that I already own? And I mean, I think PetiteKnit also just does such a great job at marketing her patterns. I mean, you know, the way she styles her patterns, the way she takes pictures of her patterns or her garments, and you know, the weight or the yarn that she uses for her patterns really also makes a difference. I mean, she uses really high quality yarns, and you can tell in the finished product, you know, that this is a high quality yarn. The garments just look beautiful. But anyways, so then I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna buy this sweater pattern. I already had one. So that kind of led me down to a rabbit hole to think, oh, what other kind of PetiteKnit alternatives do they have free on the internet? And then voila, here we are now. Anyways, the Monday Sweater. So simple raglan sweater. This one here that I'm talking about is the women's version. So this one is knit at a 22 stitch gauge using 4mm needles. An alternative for the Monday Sweater could be it's called the Essential Pullover by Yarn Citizens Design Team. So this one has exactly the same stitch gauge, so 21 stitches as well, is worked on exactly the same needle size, so 4mm needles. And the only difference here is that the neckline appears to be a little wider, so probably you don't have as many raglan increases as on the Monday sweater, I'm guessing, I don't know. And the other difference is that it's a 2x2 rib and not a 1x1, and it's not a double folded neckband. So again, these state changes are super easy if you're looking for exactly the same as the Monday sweater. Just instead of the 2x2 rib, do a 1x1 rib, make the neckband longer, and then fold it down. You'll have the same thing. Both sweaters are DK weight yarn. I believe the Monday sweater is a fingering and a mohair held together, whereas the essential pullover is just a DK weight yarn that they recommend. Another pattern that I found over on Drops Design, which again, I could have this whole video could just be drops versus petite knit, is the Winter's Breath sweater, which is, in my opinion, a pretty similar dupe to the Cloud sweater by Petite Knit. But there are some differences that we'll talk about real quickly. So both of these patterns, as far as I can tell, are saddle shoulder constructions. The Drops has a 21 stitch gauge and is worked on 4mm needles, whereas the Cloud sweater is worked on 4.5mm needles and has a 17 stitch gauge. The Drops Puna is the recommended yarn for the Drops pattern, and she has a bunch of different yarns that she recommends for the Cloud sweater, but amongst them are Snefnook and mohair, so an Aran weight and a mohair yarn. When I saw the Winter's Breath pattern, I was like, what? I already seen this pattern before, and I knew I seen it as a pattern by Petite Knit, but I didn't know what it was called. I thought it was like the Ivy sweater or something. I'm not really well versed in all her pattern names, but in any case, I was like, I've seen this pattern before. And when I went back to look on Petite Knit, indeed, it looked pretty exactly the same as the Cloud sweater. The gauge is different, so the Cloud sweater is, knit with the Snefnook as well as the mohair, so it's going to be giving you a super airy garment. But if you would want to knit the same as Petite Knit, with the 17 stitch gauge using the Snefnook and the mohair with the Drops, just check out what your gauge is and then do some knitting math to see what size you should knit for your body type and the Drops pattern, if that's something that you want to do. Before I get started with this last sweater pattern, which is going to be a drop shoulder pattern, I just want to say some things about Petite Knit's sweaters. So Petite Knit has a lot of sweater patterns that are drop shoulder, and they're pretty similar to each other. So the other day I was watching a video by String Things by Mel, and she actually compared, I think 9 drop shoulder patterns by Petite Knit to see which ones had which differences. And as far as I could tell from her video, she couldn't really find many differences. And most of them, I mean, obviously the gauge was slightly off in some, there was differences in the gauge in some of them, but the construction seemed similar. And the only real difference that she found in those 9 sweater patterns, which amongst them was the Sonia sweater, the Chestnut, Cloud sweater, the Marseille sweater, a bunch of different drop shoulders patterns she has. I don't really remember all of them. But in any case, the only real difference that she found in most of those sweaters is the recommended positive ease. So basically the size of the sweater was either bigger or smaller, like the outcome of the, based on the pattern that you chose to make. And that is pretty easy to modify. I mean, if you just have one drop shoulder pattern, you can just, if you want more positive ease, just make a bigger size. If you want less positive ease, make a smaller size. You don't need different patterns for that necessarily. In any case, that being said, the next drop shoulder pattern that I found could be applied to many different Petite Knit patterns. Also, I think the Olga sweater, which is pretty popular at the moment, could fall into this category. It's just a drop shoulder pattern with striping. So, if you want to knit the drop shoulder pattern that I'm going to recommend right now, just add those stripes and I think they will be almost the same. But in any case, the pattern that I found here is from Novita, so the Finnish yarn brand, and it's called the Alina sweater. So if you go over to their website, you're going to find this pattern for free. So the gauge recommendation here is 23 stitches, and it's worked on 4mm needles. And it has a pretty interesting construction, which I haven't seen before. So the Alina sweater, first you cast on, I think it's 144 stitches for the neck band or something. You cast on for the neck, then you knit the ribbing, and then when you finish the round, you basically just cast on more stitches for the right shoulder, then knit half of the neck band, and then cast on more shoulders for the left shoulder. So I've never seen that kind of construction before. I don't know if PetiteKnit actually has. I don't have all the PetiteKnit sweater patterns, as you can imagine. So I don't know if she doesn't have those in any of her patterns, or some of her patterns they do that. But this is the first time I've seen it actually. So again, I'm not gonna list off like all the PetiteKnit patterns and give you all the differences, because that would pretty much be a waste of time. But most of the PetiteKnit drop shoulder patterns that I found have either, you know, 20, 21, 22, 23 stitch gauge. So any of those patterns, I'll list some here, the drop shoulder patterns, are gonna be, can be made with the Alina sweater, I'm gonna say. Also, if you want to check out that video by String Things by Mel, she did a great job researching everything, and she also has Google Docs where she compares the 9 sweater drop shoulder patterns, and I'll link her video as well as the Google Docs sheet down below, so you can go have a look as well. And we have the last pattern now. So this is the vest pattern. So the holiday slipover by PetiteKnit is knit on a pretty hefty gauge. So it's knit at 10 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and it's knit on 10mm needles. And here the recommended yarn is Snefnuk or Sadneskos, something really big and fluffy. And the dupe I found was also a drops pattern, and it is called the Isla Slipover, and this one is knit at an 11 stitch gauge, so 1 stitch more per 4 inches, and it has a 8mm needle recommendation. And other than that, it looked exactly the same. I mean, the only difference that I could find is that the PetiteKnit had a split hem, which I wasn't sure based on I don't think the Isla Slipover by Drops has that. But, you know, that would be easy to do instead of, you know, X amount of centimeters, however long you want your split hem to be. Instead of keeping to knit in the round, you just knit the front panel first, or the back panel, then cast off, and then knit the back, and then cast off, and maybe 5 centimeters for your split hem, or however much that you want to do. That's it. So that was 15 free patterns that are pretty good alternatives, if not exact dupes, of PetiteKnit's popular patterns. So I'm going to be linking all of these patterns below. As I mentioned, PetiteKnit's and the dupes will be linked down below. I'll also have String Things by Mel's video, as well as her Google Docs sheets comparing all the drop shoulders sweater pattern by PetiteKnit's down below. And again, I mean, I think this exercise is such a, you know, good exercise to do every now and then, because as I said, I kind of fall into this hole where I'm knitting the same thing, or maybe not the same thing all the time, but similar designers, and, you know, to branch out and maybe give myself some incentive to not pay for patterns. I could, you know, look for alternatives on the internet that's free, because there's so many great resources online. And we just tend to forget how many wonderful people and pattern designers that there are that are offering these incredible things for free. And we should be taking more advantage of it, I think. And also, you know, finding free patterns is a great way also to, first of all, save some money and find a new designer that maybe we didn't know about before. So I really like this exercise. I hope you like this video and can find something from it as well. This was definitely not an exhaustive list. I have so many other patterns as well. I just didn't want to cram all of the patterns into one video because I thought that would going to be way too long, and I didn't want to bore you with like 2 hours of PetiteKnit dupes. But if you do, you know, if you are interested, I can definitely make a second video and you know, have some more alternatives for you by popular knit designers. Doesn't have to be PetiteKnit, could be anybody. I'm also really happy that I found these patterns, and you know, in the future I really hope to make a video about how to find free patterns online, because there's so many resources, there's so many great resources. So I hope you would be interested in one of these kind of videos as well. I really want to, you know, help especially beginners. Maybe they don't really know that well how to look for patterns online, so I really want to make sure that we're all up to par and up to speed to how to find knitting patterns, because knitting patterns, there should not be any gatekeeping. Not that there is, but you know, it should be available to a lot of people. Please leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on free patterns. Do you knit a lot of free patterns, or do you just stick with one designer or a couple designers in particular? And where do you find your patterns? I would really like to know as well. Thank you so much. Take care. Consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I post videos weekly every Friday, and hope to see you soon. Bye.